Give a round of applause to.
Not just two.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah. So the title of my talk is "My Friend Got Hacked, Then I Looked at My Own Code." So I received a text message from my friend asking for money, and I was surprised, not because it was weird to get a message from her, but because the message did not sound like her. The tone was different and the ask was too direct. I didn't respond and I thought to ask her the next day. The next day I met her and that was when she told me that our WhatsApp had been completely taken over and she was not the one that sent me the message. It was an attacker. And by the time I received that text message, everyone in our contact list was being messaged asking for money. That's where this talk starts. So my name is Temi and I'm a computer science and AI student. And this talk is built around an experience. I got to experience something that happened to my friend and it changed how I think about everything I build afterwards. So let me explain how this attack happened because it's not what you usually picture when you hear the word hacked. My friend received an invitation to a Microsoft Teams meeting. It looked professional, like it was from her place of work. She joined the meeting, and during the meeting, the person introduced themselves as a colleague, someone that she knew or had a reason to know from our organization. The person asked for a verification code that had been sent to her phone, and she had no reason to question or doubt it because she assumed it was for our workplace. She provided the code, and that was all the attacker needed because that code gave the attacker full access to our WhatsApp account. And within hours, a number was being used to message everyone in our contact list asking for money. And I was one of them. So there was no malware, no technical exploits, just a well-timed and well-worded conversation. Sorry. Yeah. I understood what phishing meant. I know what social engineering was. But when my friend was sitting with me explaining what had happened, my first thought wasn't, that's a social engineering attack. My first thought was, how do we resolve this? And the recognition of what it was came much after that incident. And I think that gap between knowing that a word exists and knowing how to identify it in real-world cases is something worth sitting with. Because my friend wasn't careless, she was just human, and I think that's the point. There's a statistic I came across while looking into this deeper, and it was that 95% of cybersecurity breaches are caused by human error. That is, not software failures, not unpatched systems, people. The security system is not just the software, it's also the people using that system. While examining this attack further, I found out 3 ingredients, and these 3 ingredients are things that you'll notice in almost every social engineering attack that you read about. Number 1 was trust. The meeting appeared to be coming from a legitimate looking channel, a colleague, so she didn't have any reason to question or doubt it because the attacker had made sure to have researched it and to make it feel real. Number 2 is urgency. The verification code that was asked for was positioned as something needed right that instant, not the next day, not after confirming with someone, but in that moment. And urgency is the thing that removes the pause between getting a request from someone and actually acting on that request. It is designed to act. It's designed for a person to ignore the question if that thing actually makes sense or not. And lastly is impersonation. By the time my friend's compromised account was being used to message everyone in her contacts list asking for money, the attacker did not need to be there anymore because they were no longer needed, because the WhatsApp account was now the weapon. So how do we resolve this? We researched the steps, we contacted WhatsApp support, and we reached out to fraud helplines as well. And eventually, the WhatsApp was able to generate a specific recovery code for her to fully recover her account back. But this took about 2 days.
Was just WhatsApp compromised or the entire phone?
Sorry?
Was just WhatsApp compromised or the entire phone?
No, it's just like the WhatsApp account, but you can use it to message someone. Alright. But after our account was recovered back, that was when the most important thing happened. Because after the incident, that was when I was able to go back and actually look at my own code. Around the time of that incident, I was building an app called InternTrack Pro. It's a platform for managing internship applications and opportunities. But after that incident, I was not only thinking about how the attacker had exploited her, but what could happen as well if my app was exploited. Before, initially, I'd just been focused on making my app work. But now, after that incident, I realized I had to make it safe as well. As I was researching deeper, I came across a framework called the CIA framework. It's one of the foundations of security, and it's confidentiality, integrity, and availability. I used this framework to audit my own code. For confidentiality, that meant, could someone else access another user's data? For example, was each user's data protected? And if someone else knew where to look, were they able to access another user's data? Integrity. Is it possible for malicious inputs to be able to be entered into the database and thus manipulating the database? And availability. In the case of an attack, would my app still remain strong, or would it become unreachable and be disrupted? And after auditing my code with this framework, I realized that not well enough. Here are some risks I found in my app after going through the framework. One was broken access control. That means another user could potentially access someone else's data by manipulating the URL, and that's a confidentiality failure. Sorry. 2, expose API keys. An API key for an app is meant to be protected, but this could easily have been accessed from my system. Thirdly is the SQL injection risk. This is when malicious inputs could be entered into my code to manipulate the database and affect the database of the app. And lastly is unvalidated inputs. When malicious input is entered into the database, it won't be checked or verified if it's right or wrong, and so it will go ahead and cause damage to the app. As I went ahead auditing my code, I realized that security wasn't just one thing, it was everywhere I looked. And these things were not things I didn't know about. I knew about them already, but I thought they were something I could figure out later and I could take care of. And I think this happens to everyone, because when you're learning to build, the first thing is learning how to make it work. Your priority is to get it to connect, to get it to work. And most times you consider security as something else to be done after your app is initially working. But sometimes later never comes, and then you go ahead to submit your project without dealing with security. And these habits that are formed during these deadline pressures are what people go ahead with in their professional lives as well. And so security, up to a point, security won't be taken seriously until someone has been given an opportunity to experience something like I did. Because it's different when you're sitting in a class and a lecturer just tells you to always sanitize your inputs before in your app. And when you're sitting with someone else who had tried to recover accounts because of a moment of misplaced trust. So, like I said, I started to learn deeper about security. I delved into the different categories of attack, not just, I was trying to understand how they happened and what they are, so I could figure out ways to prevent them as well. I also explored the Try Acme app, which enabled me to do some cybersecurity practical exercises and not just focus on the theory. Doing this, I was able to appreciate security more because it was not something I usually considered very important. Another thing I did was to evaluate my app with the OWASP top 10 list. That's the top 10 list of the most critical vulnerabilities when building web applications. I used this to audit my code, and against each of them, I was able to ask and check my code to figure out any part where I was exposed. So the CIA framework that I'd studied earlier did not just become a framework, but became a practical tool that I could use to audit my app. As regards confidentiality, I was verifying that another user could not access someone else's data. Integrity, that the data could not be manipulated. And availability, that in the case of an attack, my app would still not be disrupted. So I want to be specific about the changes I made because I believe that's what's going to be useful. Number 1, access control middleware. For the gap about the broken access control, I used the access control middleware. This would help to prevent another user from being able to access someone else's data by manipulating the URL. Then to prevent SQL injection risk, I used Prisma. Prisma is an ORM that abstracts SQL code. That means instead of using raw SQL data, you would use parameterized inputs that would prevent the risk of SQL injection. I also did validation input and sanitization such that any data that was going into the database would be checked before being added. Next was password hashing. For the user app and user password, I ensured that it was hashed, and this ensured that even if someone else got access to the database, they would still not be able to see the password as a plain text. Next is JWT authentication. I got to implement this not because it was something I had heard, because now I understood the importance in session management and secure API access. So initially, I thought security was just a checkbox, but now security had become something I was responsible for. And when it was time for me to write a new feature, my priority was not just to ask if the feature was going to work, but also to think about what would happen if someone else was able to break into that feature. And so, lastly, before I go, I would like to recommend 3 things for you to do this week. And one is to evaluate something that you've built against the OWASP top 10 list. You don't have to do a full security audit. You just have to ask yourself against each of these vulnerabilities and check if any of your code is being exposed. That is going to teach you more than anything you get in a lecture. And number 2 is to enable multi-factor authentication on anything that matters to you. Because if my friend had enabled this, when the attacker tried to enter the code alone would not have been enough to access the WhatsApp. And multi-factor authentication is a very simple step to ensure safety, but it's not consistently used by people. And lastly, is to think about the people as well, because people will be the ones to use your app. And so you have to think about if anybody tries to manipulate their data or access it, because if you don't think about this, an attacker would. In conclusion, 95% of breaches are caused by human error. My friend wasn't careless, she was just human. And the question is not to ask if this is going to happen to someone you know or not, because it's already happening. But the most important thing is to ask that, is what you're building safe enough for when this happens? This is how I build now, and it all happened because I received a message from a friend. Thank you. Any questions? Any questions? Yes, no?
That was brilliant. So, what would you do different now if you're designing your next app compared to what you were doing when you designed your original one?
Yeah.
This is very much a security by design experience, and it's brilliant that you've learned this so early. So what would you do differently for your next app that you didn't do the first time you designed your first app?
So what I would do differently is that as I'm building the app, I would evaluate it against the security vulnerabilities. The thing was that I'd already completed the app before initially. So when I was going through it after the incident happened, it was a matter of the app being ready but not yet deployed. And that was when I was trying to find the vulnerabilities. But now that I've learned this, and I understand the importance of security from the beginning, from when building the app stage by stage, I would evaluate and check and make security a priority so that when the app is completed, then the security would have been a major aspect of the app, and the app would be secure.
That's probably one of the most valuable lessons as an app designer you will ever learn.
Yeah.
So you mentioned using external dependency for your SQL. Have you thought about the supply chain risk of that? Because if you use external tools, might get spawned in goes through your app.
Sorry, I didn't get that.
Have you thought about supply chain risks with using external dependencies?
Supply chain
risk
by
in your
you.
own dependencies. Basically what it means is if the dependency you rely on gets attacked or whatever, that your app relies on that, it'll cause an issue with your app because it'll get backdoors with it.
Oh, I'm not really sure about that. But what I used was like the Prisma. So I didn't have to type actual SQL code. And so in the case if someone tried to enter raw SQL, that would not be accepted into the app. I don't know if that answered, but I wasn't really sure.
Yeah, so I think what Luna was trying to say was you're relying on kind of Prisma to provide security, but what you don't fully understand Prisma's security position and what happens if there's bugs in Prisma that you're now incorporating in yours. You could have done your own prepared SQL statements within your own code and not relied on a third-party tool to do that. So supply chain risk is becoming increasingly important in thinking about attack vectors into your own business and your own app, because you might be secure, but if you're pulling in someone else's software, someone else's library, like what's that pulling in? That's pulling in someone else's libraries. That's pulling in someone else's software. And if something happens way down the line, you don't know anything about it.
Oh, I didn't know about that before, but thank you very much. I would look into that. Any other questions?
I think, as Ian said, fantastic presentation. I think the lessons that you're learning are really the right ones here. And your final kind of statement here, it's like, it's whether your building is ready for when it does. I was at the Cyber UK conference this year, like the NCSC GCHQ one. And one of the major themes this year that I picked up that was different to previous years was not how can we prevent cyber attacks, what happens when they happen.
Yeah.
And resilience was a big theme throughout the entire conference this year. I think it's a great message that you've got here.
Thank you very much.
Pretty much giving up trying to stop it.
Yeah, we can't stop it. So what happens?
We just trying to figure out ways how to
Actually, I
manage
do. Following on, going back to the initial compromise. So you said it was a Teams meeting and then a verification code. So was the Teams meeting down to a kind of business email compromise that?
Yeah. So we were because for us to be able to get it from the place of work, it means that something else had been compromised, probably from the place of work. But I wasn't really, and we're not able to really figure out what had happened initially before she got that Teams meeting.
Did they use full-on AI generated image? Because you obviously had to speak to someone on Teams.
Yeah.
So that's a lot to go through to try to get an individual's WhatsApp account. That's a very sophisticated
So
attack.
was this a colleague that she had met before? Or, and so as Ian said, were they using AI to kind of pretend to be another colleague, or was it just an internal account that called them?
Up to a level, I'm not sure of exactly everything that happened, but the person was one of my colleagues, my mates from school, and I believed it was like an internal stuff because from the organization that happened. But that was when she received the team to get a private account.
That's excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's probably some
Something